And thank you for joining us here on PM Express. A big night indeed. If you have driven past any fuel station tonight, you possibly would have noticed that prices of products at the pumps, petrol, diesel, kerosene, they are all going up tonight. In fact, some have already started selling in the range of 9 cedi, 70 pesos. Some have gone over the 10 cedi mark already, and so this is biting hard. It's many believe this is unprecedented, but I have the guests who understand what is happening. We're going to be looking at the fuel fundamentals. One of the things we want to understand first is why are we seeing the volatility at the pumps, and then secondly, can government afford to cushion you? That's a fundamental question. I am looking forward to this conversation because I myself, I am a consumer and I drive a car, and I really want to know if government can afford. If government can't afford, how much can government really do? We'll get into that very shortly, but I need to quickly set the tone for this conversation. As I've said already, and let's track this. This is very important because in December, we were selling, this is petrol, at 6 cedi 80 pesos. That's just December. That's just less than 3 months ago. In March, it sold for 10 cedi. This is as of tonight. As of tonight, the highest we've seen so far. And in fact, we understand that some of the oil marketing companies are already pricing in the range of 11 cedi a liter for diesel in particular. And so by tomorrow, it will begin to all settle because everybody's going to be changing their boards. But in just from December, 6 cedi 80 pesos. Now we are talking about 10 cedi 80 pesos. This is what? 58.82% increase in a period of 3 months in the price of petrol, diesel, other pumps, which is really shocking. 58% jump in the price. That is a lot to comprehend. And then we begin to see the factors that apparently may be affecting this. I will get my guests to get into it shortly and break them down. The cost of crude, the refining cost, the distributing, marketing, retail, taxes, levies, and margins, exchange rate. This is a big one now. And I'm curious to find out how much of what we are seeing locally is attributed to the exchange rate matter. Because actually on the global market, the crude prices are beginning to fall on the global market. As of yesterday when I checked, we've dropped from almost $130 a barrel to within 100 now. So that's a significant drop. Why are we not seeing reflected locally? Why are we seeing a drop in crude on a global market and an increase in prices at the pumps, at your favorite pump here in Ghana? We're trying to get that for you. That's what we're calling this the fuel fundamental. So stay with me. We also know that there's something called the Energy Sector Levies Act. And because that goes to the question, what can government do to cushion you? And can government afford it? Already, we've passed a law that anticipates moments like this. It's called the Price Stabilization Recovery Levy. It's part of the Energy Sector Levies Act. And if you look at Section 5 of that law, it tells us that government should do 3 things with this particular Price Stabilization Recovery Levy that we are already paying as an insurance for times like this. First thing, as a buffer for under recoveries in the petroleum sector. Question is, do we still have under recoveries? That's one of the questions we'll ask my guests who are joining me. But the middle one, the one in red, this one, is what I want you to focus on. To stabilize petroleum prices for consumers. So we decide as a people that we are going to put in some money for insurance for a time like this. And that when this time comes, we pass a law that says that government should go into the fund and take some of that money to stabilize petroleum prices for us. So key question then becomes, is government going to do this? And can government afford to do this? Well, but it's a law, so it shouldn't be whether government can afford or not. We'll get into that. And then subsidize premix and residual fuel. Yesterday, we heard from the premix fuel committee confirming that even premix fuel, they're experiencing shortage of premix fuel. That is also very interesting because that is going to affect the fish you buy and the price at which you buy it. We know, my research desk went back to try and check. Has government fallen on the price stabilization levy and a fund before to support you? We found an incident. This is 2018 under the same government, just in the first term of the president. That and this is according to the 2018 ESLA report. The government intervened when prices were going up locally at the pumps by first reducing the price stabilization levy, and then secondly, eventually subsequently withdrawing the price stabilization levy to prevent the transmission of the escalating international petroleum prices at the pumps. So the records show that this government, under the same finance minister in 2018, did something similar to reduce and withdraw so that we can have a cushion. But it cost money. According to that report, when we did that, it cost the state 270 million CDs, by the way. That's the time, that's a loss to the ESLA that this cost us. And but the thing is that it provided some relief for Ghanaians, especially users of transportation, because it affects, as you know, the transport fares. And then you look at the price stabilization levy, you look at how much is it, if you look at it on petrol, 6 cedi a litre, diesel, LPG. So this is something that we are already paying, right? And if you look at over the years, and if you look at the report, this is a Ministry of Finance report, we are accumulating money in the stabilization levy of 2017, for example, is 300 million cedis we accumulated. The highest we've had so far is 2018 of 548 million. The last quarter one to quarter three of 2021 was 300 million. So that's money that we are putting aside for a rainy day, okay, on times like this. And as you see, cumulatively, since 2017, we have 1.8 billion should have been accrued in the price stabilization levy. We don't have the latest figures yet, and so we don't know. This could be definitely be more, right? And so really the question becomes, can government fall on this if the money is still there to help us out? We'll find out tonight. But these are the levies. You've seen this many times on this show, so I don't want to really burden you with it. But the levies that are on, you know, the petrol that you are buying tonight at the pumps, plenty of them, all of them coming down to 2 cedi 90 pesos. And on what you're saying, people say, well, government can do something. One of my guests who is joining me, I'm really excited that he's joining me because he's a deputy energy minister. Yesterday gave a hint, and I indicated to him that it's music to a lot of our ears, that we possibly will see some review in a special petroleum tax, energy sector recovery levy, and pollution sanitation levy. He's joining me to break this down for us here on PM Express. So stay with me on this as we get into this. And so my guests are already joining me. Joining me first is, you know him, Alex Mould is the former chief executive of the GMPC, was also a former head of, obviously, of the MPA. So he's been there and done that as a regulator and, of course, as a man at the helm at GMPC. So he understands this game very well. And I'm delighted that he could join me via Zoom. Also joining me tonight is Dr. Theo Champon, a good friend of mine, energy economist, has been studying this very closely. And so I'm happy that he could join me. Hello, Theo. Thanks for joining me here on PM Express once more. Also joining me, by the way, because one of the things I want to do tonight, after I've spoken to the experts, is also to gauge what we are seeing tonight at the pumps, how that might affect price of transport fares. Because if you go back, the Ghana Road Transport Union, when they met the government, they agreed with the government that they will also have a deregulated transport fare market. So anytime the price of the product at the pumps go up by more than 10%, they agree with the government that they will automatically review fares. So I want to ask him tonight, having seen the latest prices at the pumps, will that trigger an automatic increase in the fares at the pumps? And so he will join me. That I'm talking about the spokesperson for the GPRTU. And of course, Andy Japamesa, who is a deputy energy minister, is in the studio with me tonight. But let's start tonight from my good friend, Alex Mould, who is joining me via Zoom. Mr. Mould, let me start with you on this with a question. I mean, tonight, if you've driven past any of the filling stations, you may have noticed that prices are beginning to change. I mean, when I came on air, I went around to check. Somebody was quoting, for example, I don't want to mention names, but somebody was quoting 9 cedi 70 pesos for petrol. In fact, in one case, it was for diesel more than 10 cedi, 10 cedis extra few pesos. What really, help us understand, what really is accounting for what some believe to be this unprecedented price volatility at the pumps for consumers?
I think it's quite simple. The international prices that our BDCs buy from other markets, mainly in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and Antwerp, which supply West Africa, have gone up tremendously. Petrol has gone up by about 20%. And I'm talking about the two windows that the NPA uses for pricing. So the average, the price is over 2 weeks, and it ends on the 11th of this month. And compared to what ended 2 weeks prior to that, petrol has gone up 20%, and diesel has gone up nearly 35% between just these two windows. And so that accounts for quite a lot of the increase. We also have the forex, which is the exchange rate, which also counts for about close to 30% of the increase. So you have two factors. You have the FOB, which is the price we purchase the petroleum at the market, which has gone up almost 20%, and for petrol, and 35% for diesel, and the foreign exchange, which has also gone up. In terms of the actual pesos, peso per liter, the forex accounts for about 34 pesos as of the increment, and for petrol, the FOB alone accounts for about 91 pesos. So for petrol, you should be looking at an almost a CD 25 pesos increase, whereas diesel, you should be seeing something much more.
So fundamentally, you have isolated the cost of crude on the international market and also the exchange rate. Is that accurate?
Yes, petroleum products actually, not crude oil, because
okay,
we buy petroleum.
Okay, that's
yeah,
the refined petroleum products that we are bringing in.
The petroleum products also go up almost the same amount.
Okay, great. Let me bring in Dr. Choichamo. Doc, so what's your own take on that? And consider that yesterday we heard that the international prices of the product are beginning to fall back down. So if that is the case, and I was asking that question earlier when I was speaking, if that is the case, 2-3 weeks ago, we're told, yeah, watch the international price, it's going up. And so, yeah, that's a justification. But if it's coming down, it's come down quite significantly. Why are we seeing on the local front an upward adjustment whilst international prices are coming down?
Because you have to look at the way the pricing window works, as Alex was indicating. So although crude oil prices today is just around $98 a barrel, and subsequently petroleum products as well would come down, you don't see that instantaneous reaction to that, especially when we're working within the pricing window. So my expectation is that within the next pricing window, if prices stay where they are, then we should see some sort of reduction of what we pay at the pump. But the caveat to that is assuming that you don't have further decrements on the exchange rate side of things. So Alex did indicate two factors which are really important. It's the price that you buy for the product on the international market. We don't control that price. So whatever the market sets, that's what we take. And subsequently, the exchange rate, because you're buying it in dollars and then you have to sell it locally in cities. And if you look at between the two of them, my own numbers, similar to Alex's, we're talking collectively about 50% of the price drivers coming from these two single factors. So if we see the price reduction on the market currently, as we are seeing being sustained over the next couple of weeks, then during the next pricing window, my expectation is that the prices will come down at the pump. But the only sort of caveat to that is that the exchange rate doesn't depreciate further against the cedi, because that's also one of the big factors in all of this equation. We started the year with the cedi trading around 6 cedis 15 to the dollar. Now we're talking 7.63. So almost an appreciation of the dollar of about 25%, and that would have to be reflected in the pricing equation and the pricing dynamics. And then finally, the third point I think we can come to also is all of the taxes that government also impose on these products, which can be up to about half of the cost of the product itself. And I think, yeah, there are a few of them that can be scrapped or rationalized.
Okay, quickly, Alex, do you agree with the projection that possibly in the next pricing window we should see a downward, trend of the prices at the pumps locally?
Yeah, absolutely, because we mirror what happens on the international markets, and with what has happened in the last week, the information that the market has absorbed in the last week, the Chinese lockdown, which everybody knows, China is the production center of the world. That means that there will be a slowdown for demand for petroleum products and for crude oil, for electricity production as well. So we should see a reduction if prices go down. But that reduction could be rebutted by an increase in the foreign exchange, because that is growing wild. It's what's happening in the market is beyond imagination. What's going on, and I'm glad my good old friend Mesa is here to tell us what the government is doing and what we can do to curtail it. Because without stopping the foreign exchange tsunami, we could have increases in petroleum prices, even though the world market prices have dropped. So that is something we should be watching.
Okay, Mesa, do you agree with the projections? I mean, for me, I'm listening. I'm smiling. That the two of them agree there's going to be a reduction if this trends, but I think it depends on what happens to the exchange rate. Do you agree?
Well, let me say good evening to my good friend Alex. It's been a while, and to your champion as well. We haven't met as of yet, but I hope that sometime soon we'll meet. By and large, to the extent that the factors that influence the price is the global price of petroleum products, and to a large extent the exchange rate. Any reduction in the global prices of petroleum products that does not see a commensurate reduction or a stability in the exchange rate would necessarily impact the price at the pump. So, by and large, I agree with the assessments that the two fine gentlemen have made so far. Yes.
What about the caveat that they both throw up, which is the exchange rate problem?
Yes, indeed. Yesterday when I spoke to you, I indicated that some proposals had come from the NPA that has been submitted through the government channels to see what it is that can be done to ensure that, one, some relief is provided to consumers, because the prices that we're seeing today is really scary. We all feel it. And
you do?
Oh, of course, I do.
You don't buy fuel, do you?
Who says so? I have a certain allocation that is part of my conditions of service. Okay. But if it runs out, then I have to buy it.
It doesn't run out.
No, it does. You'll be amazed. Okay, I need not disclose how much I'm entitled to fuel.
You just have to give me some of that, then
it's not even up to 1,000 cedis, so really. But that's beside the point. The point is that people are feeling the heat at the pumps. Most Ghanaians are feeling the pinch.
Especially tonight when it's gone up. It's important it's gone up again.
For government to demonstrate sensitivity to the issues and to respond appropriately. And I indicated to you yesterday that that conversation has started. As we speak, some indication of some conclusiveness is about to take place. I would not want to preempt what it is that the finance ministry is going to announce in due course, but the impact has been realized by government, the ministry taking steps to ensure that some relief is provided. But you ought to know, and I guess that we all ought to then begin to appreciate that these revenues that we are asking, or government is intended to provide some cushioning, wouldn't necessarily impact what expenditure items that these revenues are going to fund in the budget. Okay. So that's the exercise that the finance ministry has been engaged with to try and see where some equilibrium can be achieved.
So they're doing some modeling to see how much it's going to impact us.
Absolutely.
So help us then. Which the proposal, which particular items were you looking at?
Well, the proposal from the NPA that the ministry endorsed was the special petroleum tax, the price stabilization and recovery levy, and then also the sanitation and pollution levy that we expressed some desire for the government through the Ministry of Finance to look at what they could, as it were, accommodate. Then again, to address directly the point that the two gentlemen have made relative to the exchange rate issue, another proposal that came was to get the Bank of Ghana to dedicate some or create some FX market for petroleum products and guarantee a certain FX rate for a minimum period of 2 months. Okay, indeed, just this evening I was involved in a meeting at the NPA with industry players, and this came up strongly. And so that is something that we are also going to push as a ministry to the finance ministry to see to what extent that FX market can be created purely for the petroleum sector, so that in itself would assure some stability in the price for us all to benefit at the pump. So, but these are proposals that have come up that require some work to be done on, so that we can arrive at some definitive conclusion to bring relief to all of us.
I mean, time is of the essence.
Absolutely.
So is there any time frame the government plan to get this being felt at the pumps?
Well, Evans, I wish that there was a quick fix, but clearly it's not, because bear in mind that the forex market itself is a liberalized market where the forces of demand and supply then determine what the rate is at every particular time. Obviously, we've seen some deterioration in the city from where I sit purely out of speculation. A lot of people are speculating, and so there's a rush for forex. Okay, I don't know to what extent that is justifiable, but the Bank of Ghana, I believe, like the president indicated, I believe a week or so ago, that they put in measures to ensure that speculation that is driving the market, like Alex used through some tsunami, if you like, is brought under some control. But I believe that what the industry players have proposed is something that ought to be interrogated. And so we as a ministry, our duty is to advocate so that those who manage the finances of the state can then make a determination as to whether that proposal itself is feasible and to what extent that it can be applied, so we all get a benefit of the relief.
So the three taxes, price stabilization recovery levy currently is 14%? 14 pesos?
Yes.
14 pesos. And then there's which other one you mentioned? The three.
Special petroleum tax.
Special petroleum tax, that is 40, that's 49
That's right.
pesos.
Yes.
And then the pollution, I think, is 10, is it? I'm just checking.
Yes, I believe it's 10 pesos.
Yeah, 10 pesos.
Yes.
Okay. Was the proposal from the MPA that you scrap or you reduce?
Well,
or you suspend?
a reduction.
Okay.
Because bear in mind that the rate really has been set by Parliament. And so any proposal to reduce the rate that has been set, save for the price stabilization and recovery levy, where the minister is mandated to exercise his discretion to either suspend, reduce, or review, if you like, periodically, which has been done in the past. You recall that sometime in November, government, through the intervention of the MP and the ministry, suspended it for a while. It had to be reintroduced because the fund, the information that I had was that it had run to the point where it could not be used to pay for the two line items that that fund is also used to support, which is subsidies on premix and then subsidies on RFOs. And so it had to be reinstated so that some fund can be accumulated in the fund to pay for those items. But the recommendation that came from the NPA was for government to look at reviewing these taxes to see where it is that some relief can be provided for the consumer. And I'm saying that that recommendation is receiving positive consideration, and my expectation that in due course some announcement will be made as to what extent that government would be able to accommodate, just so that the budget itself is not disrupted significantly. Yes.
Dr. Chetampo, what do you say to that?
Interesting points that Honorable Mesa is making. And I remember 6 months ago on one of your platforms actually calling for a review of the whole tax structure that we pay. And specifically, I did indicate that I could not see the rationale for the sanitation and pollution levy, number one, the special petroleum tax, and then, the price and stabilization levy as well. The road fund luckily has been zero rated now, but these 4 line items on the levy side of things, I always couldn't find, enough justification on them, particularly when you take a look at the price and stabilization levy, because, you read the act and what we're meant to be using that money to do. But of the 4 things that we're meant to be using that to do, we predominantly have been heavily subsidizing premix and residual fuel oil. I just looked at the numbers for the price builder published by the NPA. And if you look at the 16th March data, RFO ex-refinery price was 711 Ghana pesos, so 7 cedis, 11 pesos. And there's a recovery margin coming from the price stabilization levy, basically a subsidy of almost 5.44 cedis or 544 pesos. So basically, when you work out the ex-refinery price that we are selling that particular product, it's almost 23% of the actual cost. And for premix, it's almost 11% of the actual cost. And, there are so many other things that we're meant to use the price stabilization and recovery levy to do, one of which is actually to cushion in times of, upward swings like that. But I cannot see why we are heavily discounting RFO or premix, particularly, again, when the evidence on the ground sometimes shows that for premix, people are diverting it or, stealing it and using it for other things other than what is meant to be. So I think the suggestions coming from the minister is about right, but fundamentally what we need to do is actually relook at the whole taxes and margin structure that we impose on these petroleum products.
Yes, quickly. I'll get
sure.
Alexis
Indeed,
talk to this.
I am aware that my minister has initiated some process to get cabinet approval for the removal, if you like, in a graduated manner of the subsidies on RFOs, for example, okay? Because the whole idea of commercializing
By the way,
gas,
for those mere mortals, what is RFO?
it's residual fuel oil, which is used by some industrial entities to power their plants and all that. So the whole idea is to do some domestic gas enclave in Tema, okay, and to make that gas competitive. It's important that the subsidies on RFO is gradually removed. That infrastructure hasn't been built, okay? And so the proposal that we are considering is to, whilst we roll out the infrastructure, to gradually reduce the subsidy amount on the RFO, just so that it coincides with the completion of the gas infrastructure in Tema to enable us to take away completely the subsidies on RFOs. I don't know about premix, because my understanding is that for 16 years, the price of premix have remained fixed. And for good reason, because I come from a fishing community. Yes, there are some bad nuts who occasionally are caught diverting, stealing these premix that is heavily subsidized. But the truth of the matter is that that goes a long way to support the sustenance of the local fishermen. And so governments after government have found the need to use that petroleum price stabilization and recovery levy amount, a component of it, to subsidize premix for our farmers and fishermen who rely on these for their sustenance.
Yesterday we heard from the premix fuel committee, and they're talking about there's a shortage now of premix fuel. I mean, you come from a place that you know this because you're on the pulse, your hand is on the pulse there.
Yes.
Where the constituents are. I mean, do we know why? What are you telling your fishermen constituents?
Obviously, there's some supply chain issues as well. Okay, indeed, we're looking potentially going forward if we don't put in some measures, experiencing shortages at the pumps, sometime May, June, thereabout. And so part of the conversation that we had at the meeting that I indicated to you I attended today was to find ways of ensuring that we do not get there. Okay, so my suspicion, and I need to confirm from the Premier Secretariat as to whether indeed the suppliers who then, the BDCs who deal in these premix are the ones that are having the challenge, or that it is the blending facility at all that is really creating the problem. I heard about the shortage only today, and I'm yet to find out what the details really are.
Let me bring in Alex. Alex, so to the points that the Japan Mesa has talked about, the government intervention to cushion consumers. He's mentioned 3 line items. I'll isolate the other intervention, possible intervention, which is the creating the forex, special forex for a special conversation very shortly. But I wanted to give me a quick comment on the 3 line items in the build-up that government is looking at reviewing. Hello, Alex. Please unmute for me. Please unmute for me.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I said it's something that they should have done long ago. Those are things that are within their control. I think the challenge government has is it's always just looking at the revenue it will lose if it removes these levies and taxes from the petroleum price. But government should also be looking at the extra revenue that they are making from the crude oil sales and from royalties and taxes that they get from the oil companies, because our benchmark price was, I think it was about $61 or something like that. And the average price that is projected by all the research companies in the country and in the world is showing that our crude oil price is going to be no less than $85 for the full year. For the first quarter, we're going to look at something above $100. The second quarter, it will drop to about 90, and for the rest of the year, it'll be in the 80s. So the average for the year is going to be about $85 to $90. So if you look at the windfall, and we should understand that government will be getting windfall because government has only budgeted for $61. So my calculation based on that shows us that based on 59 million barrels of crude oil, Ghana gets about 20% of the total crude oil, and it is split between royalties and then also something we call the CAPI. And the CAPI is basically the carried and participation interest, and then we have taxes. We're looking at an increase in royalties for this $20 increase, for about $68 million. With regards to our equity contribution, we are looking at about $250 million. And with regards to taxes, this is from the windfall that will derive to the partners, the cost sponsors, the TOLOs, the ENIs. We're looking at about 235. So in all, we're looking at a windfall of almost $550 million coming the way of government. And this is something that government should look at critically if government wants to use part of that to subsidize the price for the consumer. So it's not only the reduction in taxes that they can be looking at, they can also be looking at the windfall that they're going to make, which I have told you will be about $550 million. We are only expecting about $1 billion from the revenue projected, but the windfall will give us an incremental $550 million, which government has not budgeted for, and which is going to help government in their various programs and in their expenditure and in the shortfall of revenues that they may not be getting, like the popular e-levy.
Yeah, so that's a very important point.
But you see, Alex knows very well that it's not as simple as that.
It's simple.
No, it's not.
You budgeted the
no,
budget.
Hold on.
You are 80.
Hold on. One. These extra funds, okay, assuming that we're working with the 550 to be accurate, and in any event, it's mere projections. has to be distributed by a certain formula that is contained in the Petroleum Revenue Management Act. So the component that goes to ABFE clearly would not be 550 million. Okay. Secondly, in any event, we ran a deficit financing. Yes, last year there was some short windfall, but still we ran a budget deficit. So I'm saying that the total revenues, regardless of the so-called windfall that we're making references to, still is insufficient to meet our development needs to the extent that we still have to borrow to meet the shortfall. So it's not as simple as throwing out figures to suggest that all this money is going to come into the government kitty, and so government can use it to then provide some subsidy or relief to consumers.
But all is going to come to government kitty.
Of course.
Is it only the case that there's a law that governs how you spend it?
The law that governs how you spend it requires you to give GMPC a component of that money to fund their equity contribution from that is due.
Except that we know that government has not always followed the regulations surrounding how to spend the money.
We can argue that out.
But you know, but that's a fact.
I'm saying that, yes, potentially, government is going to generate over and above what it budgeted for as revenue expected from petroleum, okay, or crude sales. But let it not be seen to be the case that that money is just going to come in and so it can be used to provide subsidies.
If government prioritizes cushioning the citizens, government can do so.
You see, you need to look at the broad picture.
Yeah.
You're already running a deficit budget such that even the non-passage or the delay in the passage of the e-levy is creating problems of it by itself. Okay? And so any incremental amount of money that comes to government can only go to reduce the burden that already exists, or the hole that already exists that government is struggling to fill. So if you say that use that money to provide subsidies for consumers and leave the hole there and find alternative resources to fill, I really have a difficulty with that reasoning, okay, with all due respect. And so let's interrogate it properly and see where it is that indeed government is actually generating some extra funding or some extra revenue that can really go into providing subsidies for consumers.
I mean, very quickly, Alex, you concede the point?
Well, money is fungible. So the fact of the matter is a government has been elected to judicate over the monies that they procure. All I am saying, and I'm just giving numbers out there, and these are facts, anybody can calculate them, the government will be getting $550 million extra from a windfall of $25, which is not being budgeted for. Now, my good friend Mesa is right, there is a formula, but he also knows that his Minister of Finance can go to Parliament, like he has done a number of times, to decide or to get Parliament to approve him either not giving GMPC more money, and GMPC doesn't need more money anyway because they've been catered for by the budgeted $61. So this extra money can be used and can go into our APFA, or it can go into the various stability and heritage funds, which government have dipped their hands in before. And that means government can dip their hands in again. We are in trying times, and the Minister of Finance, his job is to manage this economy as best as he can. And with this, given this $550 million windfall, I believe that he can do the right thing to the people of this country. And one of them is to reduce the burden, because if fuel prices go up, transport prices go up, everything goes up, inflation goes up, then all his indices go out of whack. And if you're not careful, it will spiral out of control, and we will have, like I said, no other alternative but to prepare a performance improvement plan and go to the IMF and seek their support to bring credibility back into the economy, which, as we all know, based on what is happening in the international markets, our bond prices are trading around 70 cents to the dollar. That means that anybody who bought the bond when it was issued has lost 30% of his value. And this is why a lot of investors are selling their bonds. And also those of them who have invested in our local bonds, and we are one of the countries that have high foreign direct investment investing in our local bonds. They are trying to get out of these local bonds, and that is why there is a lot of pressure on the foreign exchange, because people who, foreigners who have sold their CD bonds need foreign exchange to repatriate it, and we don't have any law stopping people from repatriating. And this is where the pressure is coming from. There is no foreign exchange at the banks. The last thing I would like to say, Evans, is I mentioned this on Good Morning Ghana, and my good friend Nessa was there, and he said he was going to take it to the Minister of Finance and the Minister of Energy to see what they can do. One of the challenges we have is we buy our petroleum products and we leave it to the BDCs and their banks to source the foreign exchange, and these are being sourced at very high rates as compared to the rates that Bank of Ghana is selling the foreign exchange. So if we can get Bank of Ghana, and these are trying times, so we need all hands on deck, Bank of Ghana, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy, to come to some compromise and know exactly how much foreign exchange is required by these BDCs, and ensure that these BDCs and the banks that they use channel these funds that are bought at the Bank of Ghana rate to pay for petroleum products that these BDCs have bought, unlike the past where most of these funds would found their way to other areas. If we can channel this money to buy the foreign exchange, it will reduce the volatility of the foreign exchange prices that these various BDCs use. And this is why it's causing about 34 pesos.
In fact, I must indicate at the beginning, he said he just come out of a meeting where it has been mentioned, and the ministry endorses each other. The ministry endorses this particular approach, and they're going to recommend it to the finance ministry to do the modeling.
Well, I'm very glad that my good friend saw the wisdom in what we proposed to him, and it has been taken up by government, because this is one of the things that we can do to help reduce the volatility in the prices. Thank you.
Fantastic. Now, I want to take a pause here quickly and bring in the GPLT, because the price is going up tonight. I just want to get a sense of what is going to happen with fares so that you can plan also going forward. After that, I'll take a break. When I return, I'll focus a bit on, so can government afford what the finance ministry is considering now? The 3 taxes or levies that they're considering. Can government afford it in the times that we're in? I'll ask you, Dr. Teo Champon, your thoughts on that. We'll also go back to 2018. The last time government indeed spent part of the price stabilization levy, we drew it, and subsequently we lost from the accounts, that the report that was published, more than 200 million was lost to the ESLA. I mean, where we are currently in 2022 with the economic challenge we are facing, how much can government afford in cushioning us? We'll get to that shortly. But let me bring in Imor Abbas. He speaks for the GPRTU. Ms. Abbas, thank you, and thanks for your patience and holding on to talk to us. How are you, sir? Hello, Ms. Abbas.
Yeah, hello. Good evening.
Thank you very much for your patience. I'm grateful that you stayed on.
Good evening, and good evening to all viewers.
Fantastic.
I'm fine.
Let me ask you, have you seen the pumps, the filling stations tonight, and have you noticed the price going up?
Yes, we have. We have keenly been following the trend here.
Okay. So let me ask you that straightforward question. When you last met with the government and you agreed the new transport fares, one of the agreements you reached was that if the prices at the pumps go beyond 10%, you automatically will adjust. The prices that you've seen at the markets at the pumps tonight, has it triggered that clause?
Yes. You know, we are in commercial business. and we are in to make profit. And nobody will buy something 3 pesos and sell it at 2 pesos. No. We did make mention in the last upward adjustment to the public that should the 10% threshold get on its peak, we shall definitely come out with another upward adjustment in law effect, just to make sure we continue serving Mother Ghana. You remember later part of last year, we suggested scrapping out of some of the taxes levies. Duncan Amwa and his team also came up with the same suggestion. Well, and the whole issue today, MPA has also come out with the same suggestion. Let's ask, when we came up with this suggestion, where were MPA? Is it going to be like when I was growing up, I met security, today we say security men. I met the name watchman on their neck. Today, the same business that the watchman is doing, we say security men. Is it that when we suggested, because we are drivers, nobody will take it in good faith? And because MPA has suggested the same thing today, government is going to accept that in good faith. Anyway, we are in commercial business. We are working to make sure we make profit. So definitely, we've been told that NPA has come up with this suggestion. If nothing is being done about it also, then next week upward, we have to adjust our fares.
Okay, so you're working. So what you're suggesting to commuters is that next week, if nothing happens, you would increase your fares again.
Yes, that is exactly what we are saying.
Okay.
But because we have heard that NPA has also come up with the same suggestion, we have to allow some few days so that if government is able to listen to them, fine. If not, we have no choice. You remember?
Yeah, let me just inform you that we have the Deputy Energy Minister in the studio, and he's confirmed that the Energy Ministry has endorsed the MPA's proposal to reduce the thing. So so government is firmly in support of this. It's just a matter of waiting for the
Honorable Mercy is a friend. Say hi to him.
Yeah,
tell him
he's had you
in serious business. So if they do something about it, fine. If they don't, we have no choice. Yes.
Okay. So should I assume that if nothing happens, fares will go up by what? Another 10% or less?
Oh, we have to meet.
Okay.
And decide on the percentage we have to. See, this time we are not going to wait till 25%, 30%. When we came out with that religious 15%, we were in the country when some of our people were blaming us that no, the 15% was too small, but we religiously accepted that just to move the country forward.
Okay.
So this time around, we are going to go by our words.
Okay,
no,
great.
it was documented. We distributed them to some of you.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Abbas, I'm grateful for that. That offers clarity for all of us, some of us who are commuters. I'm going to take a break. When I return, I'll hear from Ejapa Mensah on this. At least they have decided to wait to see if Ejapa Mensah's endorsement to the finance minister will go to the cabinet to approve. But it says next week, so you have a deadline, Mr. Mensah. When I return, can government afford the reductions that the energy minister has already proposed? And if they can, how much can government take? How much of a hit can government take, considering the very peculiar economic circumstances we find ourselves in right now? Dr. Tui Champon will go first on that question when we return. Thanks for staying with me here on PM Express. Let's go straight to it. That big question, Dr. Tui Champon. So government has indicated we may possibly see a review of 3 levies. Can government afford this in the current economic climate?
Absolutely, they can. And there's no denying the fact that we're in difficult economic times. But also, as Alex indicated, there's a possibility that if oil prices stay above $80 a barrel, we get anything between $300 and $500 million extra. The Petroleum Revenue Management Law circumscribes how that money can be spent, but we've seen instances in the past where basically they set aside the law and use it for other things. Nonetheless, I don't think the optimal way of using that money is actually to cushion consumption. I think we can, if not attain the same level or the same effect, just by significantly reducing or scrapping some of the taxes, i.e. the sanitation and pollution levy, which is a nuisance tax, by the way. The special petroleum tax can significantly come down. And then the price recovery and stabilization levy can also come down. If we work on these three line items, we can get anything up to 20-25% reduction overnight on these line items without having to tap into the windfall that we're getting on the upstream side of things. But long term going forward, and this is just a quick one, I think especially on the price stabilization and recovery levy, I would want to challenge us and challenge perhaps the minister a little bit that the whole regime of subsidizing premix by as much as 90%, right, of the total cost, I can understand half of the cost, but if we're taking a hit of up to 90% just to make a certain segment of the population, in my view, sometimes also for political votes, then it's not the optimal way of making things in terms of running the economy. So I think there's a suggestion here really for us to look at all the line items. I agree with the three that can be dealt or done away with, but there are other substantial issues that we need to address, including the other two line items. We've got an energy debt recovery levy, and we also have an energy sector recovery levy. Those two items can actually be merged into one, and again, ensure that the monies are being used for what they have been budgeted.
Let me quickly, Japa Mensah, can you afford it?
Well, I'm not so sure that the suggestion that all these taxes can be done away with is really something that is real, okay? Because if you cut out all these taxes, okay, you are talking in the region of in excess of 600 million cedis per month. And so if you multiply that by 12, that's significant. Okay, you're talking almost 3.6 billion Ghana cedi. Bear in mind that all these revenue measures have been provisioned for in the expenditure item that is contained in the budget. So we need to find a balance. Okay, I'm sure that government can accommodate some level, but not the levels that Dr. Tua Champon is recommending. And we ought to all acknowledge the fact that whatever cuts that we are asking government to take on the revenue end ought to have a commensurate impact on the expenditure end as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Japa Mensah. Thank you, Dr. Tua Champon. Thank you, Alex, for joining me. This conversation already just begun. We'll have it again definitely as we approach, next 2 weeks. What I'm taking from all of you is that I should expect a reduction if the exchange rate doesn't misbehave next week. For our consumers who are watching, they are taking this away. Plus, the transport operator telling us that if Japa Mensah can keep to his word, then we shouldn't expect an increase in fares. Those two things I'm holding on him to, and I'm counting that Alex and Theo are right with their projections also. Enjoy the rest of your evening.